Three, two, one. Hello, Noemi. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi there. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for this opportunity.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And for anybody listening that is not familiar with who you are and what you do, can you introduce yourself to us?
Sure, definitely. I'm Noemi Vox, and I'm an actor and voice actor. I record in Polish, English, and Spanish. And I'm also a teacher, so I run all kinds of workshops. I've worked with universities, but I've been able to do quite a bit of modeling, which is super, super fun, especially recently, and some brand work. So there's a lot of stuff I do. I suppose I write poetry and sometimes for commission, but I'm sure we'll get into the details of that. And overall creative, definitely. So an actor mainly.
And how did you get started with all of these venues of your creativity outflows? Of course, the languages, but also modeling and acting and voice acting. How did you get started with all of that?
So when I was little, I won a casting, and I suppose in that sense, it was fairly quick. You record something, people like it, and then your voice ends up in commercials and different fun projects. So my first commercial ever was about a phone and how everybody likes one of the friends because of the phone he got, a new phone, etc. So
Very
I was,
materialistic.
yes, well, it sounds like it, yeah. But it was super cute, and I remember my voice just, being so little and everything. So that was the very first um, commercial. Obviously, you need to like the brand that you work with, and I think that um, that's important. If the brand's happy with how you would represent it, then you got to do your uh, you got to put your best foot forward and just give it a go. So that's how the sort of voice acting started originally. And then I did all kinds of stuff. I went out for fall play, the musical in high school, anything that I could. And then did a lot of auditions, studied acting, and did a lot of acting courses as well. And I think the biggest aspect of that was when I was teaching critical thinking, and I was telling kids that, you know what, as long as you make your dreams into your goals and you actually put work into it, believe in yourself, and just give yourself a chance, then chances are you might end up making your dreams come true. And then I just realized, hey, I'm telling them all this. How about I do it for myself? So that's how acting started.
And have you been loving every second of it, or have there been some ups and downs?
I think it's actually, I love it because there are intense moments. And I mean, anytime I perform, even today, I was quite excited about our conversation. And I was excited to a point that you get flustered, you get uh, these moments of extreme energy, and you almost feel ill, or you're too happy, you're laughing, and you figure out what in the world is happening. But it's essentially excitement going through you. So a lot of people call it nerves. I call it excitement. And I remember a few years ago, I heard somebody discussing that it is similar to excitement, and that's how I choose to word it, and it works very well. So I would say you need to love the journey, whatever it is that you're doing. So if I need to study lines, I love it. If I need to do background work and work on the characters' background information, I get excited about it. But then again, that's a part of my personality. I get pretty excited about anything.
And have you ever worked with people that didn't, and have you maybe found a way to make other people excited?
I think I think this is a great question because it's okay to be excited. And it's also okay not to be. It's okay to maybe be a bit more stoic or withdrawn, or just take time to process what it is that you're doing. So when you work on different productions, let's say it's a festival and it's an outdoors festival, you might have a lot of extroverted, happy out there people, but you might have somebody who is very focused, a bit more stoic, and just doesn't want to share all their feelings all the time. So I think the acceptance of including newer diversity, people are so different and that's okay, helped me. And then if I saw that somebody maybe was struggling, and if they just um, switched this understanding of, oh, this is stress, oh, this is too bad, oh, I can't do it, into the excitement, then definitely I try to inspire people to do that because it can help them. But if it's just about their way of being, then yeah, let them be whoever they are, I suppose.
Very good lesson for the very beginning.
Thank you.
And tell us, for anybody listening, how did you get started with your languages? Because you mentioned Spanish, Polish, we were talking about that last time, English, obviously. How did that start for you?
So there's a concept of being a third culture kid, and my friend would love to tell you probably all about this. And if I can do it justice, long story short, is that it's a person who's lived all over the place, uh, got educated in one place, and maybe works in another, which is also um, a running joke for Armenians. I mean, our diaspora is huge. We're all over the place for various reasons, including um, historic and quite traumatic. So it is normal for us to have traveled, maybe be born in one place and then live somewhere else, be educated somewhere else. So for me, that's how it started. I was born in Africa, and then I've lived all over the place since. Spent my formative years in the States, and I do very much you know assign my sort of language learning and original education to that. So spoke English with my dad, Polish with my mom, English with my sister, and now we all just speak a mix, either Polish or English or what have you. And then I fell in love with Spanish and learned that, and I lived in Spain, so that helped. So,
My
and
goodness.
then definitely, but because I absolutely love people and talking to people and listening to them and seeing how they view the world, it definitely helps if you know different languages, because it's just like opening up a book that is magical, and there's no other way to get through it unless you actually understand what people mean. So there's a lot of languages that um, I'm still interested in, and I do some studying and courses. And if I can't sleep, I either watch medical programs or lectures, university lectures, usually medical, or languages. So I just study that. It's just a part of who I am, I suppose.
And do you watch all of these lectures in predominantly English or Polish or Spanish, or
It
what's your
depends on the
language
topic.
choice?
It depends on the topic. So there's a lot of great American content for that that is backed up by um, medical research, etc. I mean, I watch all kinds of podcasts and video podcast episodes as well. So there's all kinds of fun and interesting holistic approaches out there. But if I can make it as nerdy as possible and as scientific, then that gets exciting. So a lot of this content is indeed in English, but if I can find something else in Spanish or Polish, I happily eat that up as well.
That's something that a lot of my students really struggle with, especially with their first language, that they want to learn something, discover
Mhm.
something new, and then maybe it hasn't really been translated yet, or maybe just the very basics have been translated. And I've noticed that even for myself, that it's very difficult sometimes to find genuine and current information about
Mhm.
more specific topics, like you said, maybe science, medicine, maybe environmental studies, and so on, because it takes, of course, a lot of time to translate everything and for somebody to catch wind of it and then translate. So there's that whole extra step, versus in English, you just have it all ready to go, let's say. So that's been a huge advantage, and that's something that a lot of, again, people mentioned to me as well, that oh, they want to study something in Spanish, but there are not really a lot of resources, so they just have to learn it in English. So another
That's very
benefit, I
interesting.
suppose.
Yeah, I mean, the more languages you have to pick from, the more topics you might be able to access originally, and it depends on where the study is found. But I suppose something that's really good is that more studies are widely available, and a lot of international teams work on different things. So there will be at least an abstract, anything, or a summary of something um, in various languages for many topics. Uh, but another thing is to research what a certain culture and country is known for, and try to get into that, and that draws us in to that culture even more.
Can you give me any specific examples of any what you said before? I really like that. Any of those magical moments that you've had in a language that you've learned just or maybe predominantly because you saw that, you learned it, you experienced it in that particular language? Do you have any examples in mind?
I'm sure there's a lot of them. It's more about the understanding of a certain situation or culture, or a certain idiom that you might have that doesn't exist in a different language. And I might have to come back to that to give something very specific. But the fact that you are either happy or that you understand a certain gesture. There's this moment when you're learning a language and you just forget that it's a different language. I think that's ever encompassing, really, because uh, it just makes you become somebody else in a way. For that second, you just naturally understood it and never questioned that it's a different language or who said it. It's just that you were living in the moment. So anything that brings you closer to living in that moment, I think is wonderful. So, um, for example, if we've got trying to think about different idioms, etc., but there okay, something cute. Something I tend to say a lot. And for me it's a Polish idiom, just because, or a Polish saying rather, because I do feel very comfortable speaking English, and I do feel very comfortable speaking Polish as well. But there are moments that, especially living in the UK right now, or having lived in the States, you don't necessarily forget, but you lose a bit of confidence. And I think you have to bring yourself back. So there's something cute that I say a lot, and it's called Jaki pan, taki kram. And it just means that um, pet owners look a bit like the owners, and the pets look a bit yeah, the pet owners, now that I got myself confused, there we go. The pet owners look like pets, and pets look like pet owners, which is super cute, because when you realize um I've got three cats, and they are extremely fluffy and furry and silly and whatnot. So I suppose even them, you could see, be like, yeah, they're her cats. But it's just one of those cute things where if you're walking with your friends and you see I see a lot of golden retrievers. So let's say you see a golden retriever and a cool girl, just sort of relaxed and with long hair, and you just can tell that they're some sort of a family, energetic family. So okay. So if my friend says that in Polish, I don't spend that moment going, wait, what was that thing again? It's more like, "Mm, yeah," and I just move on, next thought, something else, something silly. And I think that's what I'm talking about when I say that those magical moments just add up, because it's those normal moments when you forget that maybe you spoke a different language first, or you forget that there was any sort of a difference or distance between you and somebody's mode of communication.
And that can get very confusing, and I wonder what your experience has been with that. That sometimes you're thinking in one language and then you start speaking in that language, and then you realize, wait, no, you don't speak that language. We have to switch to something different now. Does that happen to you?
I think I had a lot of experience speaking a few at the same time. Well, the three. So I do speak basics of Armenian, some Japanese, some Russian, some French, and some German. So there's some Arabic. I just get excited about things. So I could probably add words. But I remember working in a bistro, and somebody was standing behind the bar, and it was a chef and he was Polish. Then we've had somebody on the bar who was Spanish, and then we had the manager who was British. And I needed to sort of continue this communication, whatever we were trying to sort out, and it was quick. So I love moments like that. I usually don't struggle, but what I do struggle with is when I'm hungry. That's silly. I shouldn't be saying this, but
Yeah.
I just find it hilarious. So I'm going to share this. If anyone is up for silly things, then um, you're in for a treat. I tend to have this thing, which is a Freudial, isn't it? Freudian slip, which is when you're thinking about something and then it comes out when you're talking about something else. So I have that if I'm hungry. And I have on multiple occasions said things like, this room is a steak, or how many sandwiches do you speak? Anything like that. So that is definitely a Freudian slip. That doesn't even have anything to do with languages. It's just me being silly, tired, or hungry. So there you go.
Hopefully not all at the same time.
No, 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 no. No, we don't go into hangry mode. We do not let ourselves get there.
No,
And I
no.
suppose that's another thing, actually, if we're giving any sort of advice, you've got to take care of yourself first. So if anyone's learning anything, stop putting pressure on yourself. Stop constantly saying, oh, but these people are just so fluent so quickly, or
Mm,
why don't I know these verbs? You know what? Because you don't, or maybe you do, but you're too stressed out to see that you do know these things. So taking care of yourself, whether it's sleep, food, or just easing off with the pressure a little bit, goes a long way.
and that's a really wonderful piece of advice because, like you said, a lot of people I feel struggle with that, oh, but my friends at work speak better, or I don't know, my manager speaks better, or whoever speaks better than me. And sure, maybe they do. Maybe they started learning earlier. Maybe they did some courses or whatever. I mean, there are millions of different options of why they could speak better, but that doesn't make you automatically worse somehow, that, oh, you're horrible and you're not worth anything and you shouldn't open your mouth. I mean, finding a little bit of a balance
Yes,
between the two.
definitely. 100%. And when I teach my students, I do a lot of language work. Um, I've got my social media account dealing with that. I do private classes as well. So it's uh, English or Polish or Spanish. And I find that it is all about what we tell ourselves, really. If we say that we can't do it, then that's how it's going to be. If we say that we can, with time and effort, we will be able to do things. So you've got to just let go a little bit.
No, certainly. And I'm really curious, and this is something that we touched on last time, and something that you said that you might have an unconventional view of potentially. And I like that you already alluded to that a little bit with being somebody different in a different language and having a quote unquote different personality in different languages. What's your take on that?
So I think I tend to approach things holistically, and essentially it's a nice mambo jumbo mix up of everything that I can. Uh, because everything is connected. And however airy fairy it sounds, I do feel like so many things can influence each other. So I do a lot of acting, and I know you sort of take on a certain character, but you also create it. You also give a lot of you, who you are, to a character when you're portraying somebody. And it is quite similar when you're speaking a different language. It is a mix of cultural norms that you end up um, subconsciously or consciously picking up on. It's a mix of the stage in your life that you're at. So, how old were you when you were learning a certain language? How confident were you? Was it something that you wanted to do for yourself and you paid for a certain course, or you bought yourself a ticket, traveled across the world and started learning? Are you actually then naturally more confident when you're speaking that new language, because that is a new part of your personality? So rather than necessarily becoming somebody else and dropping whoever you are, it's more about discovering or even creating, developing a part of yourself that maybe was sleeping or needed to be developed, or just somehow got added to who you are. You're, as we can quote Shrek, you're a bit like an onion and have layers, and that's who we are. So I definitely feel that in a different language. There is more of a freedom to maybe act a certain way. Another magical moment, certain cultures are either maybe louder. Obviously, these are some assumptions, but let's say rather than assuming that people are like that, it's more the social norms that have been accepted in a given society. Some people might speak louder or use their hands, um, or be more expressive in general. And if you can allow yourself to just be a certain way when you're speaking a different language, rather than assuming that you will just translate from your current language to another, ideally, literally, and that's how it's going to be. No, you're just discovering how you want to make connections and how you want to communicate using a new tool, which is essentially the new language.
From what I understand, your acting and potentially maybe voice acting experience has helped you, like you said, bring that out of yourself in a new language. Would you say that they commingle?
Definitely, immensely. Languages have helped me with acting and voice acting, and voice acting and acting helped with learning new languages. So the way it works for me is I do a lot of voice work. So whether it's warm ups or knowing that I'm dropping down my voice or putting it in a different register or putting a bit of a different spin on it or, adding a creak, which is quite natural to me anyway. So just understanding, I think self reflection with anything, but understanding your voice, understanding why you sound a certain way and how to go about it is brilliant, because it gives you food for thought when it comes to improving what it is that you already know or appreciating yourself already. So in that sense, understanding my voice from all the voice work helps, and it helps me to understand the sounds. And each language has accents and sounds, and the register that people might be more likely to use, maybe they sound a bit higher or lower. I tend to sound lower when I speak Spanish than in English. So it's quite interesting. I also speak, um, Spain Spanish, and it's a different there are different accents anyway, but it's a bit more akin to a Valencian, so Valencia Spanish. So it's and obviously we just continue to learn. Again, it's this idea of forgiveness and self-reflection and enjoying the moment, and acting comes into play here because you are, even if we wanted to say that we're becoming a different part of ourselves, um, we need to have a bit of a background for it. We need to understand why and what's okay to do, what isn't, and how do we want to be seen? How do we want to express ourselves? Are we confident? It's that reflection again, and you can actually get quite nerdy about acting and acting technique, and then let go and be in the moment.
There is so much to unpack here. I'm not really sure what to start with.
Go ahead, anything.
But okay, I would really like to dig into what you said at the very beginning with the different accents that you have created in yourself or learned different accents that you can play around with them and use different ones. And like you said, of course, every language has its set of accents and tones and sounds and so on. And this is something that I feel like a lot of people struggle with. And this is something that I love the idea of what you said, that it's not really that you have to improve your accent or you have to, get better. You can just learn a new accent. You can simply learn a different one. And I feel like that's so much easier to comprehend than, okay, how do I improve my accent? How do I change it? But it's not, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. You can simply just learn something new from scratch, basically. That, okay, here's an English accent, here's an American accent, here's a Canadian accent, here's a whatever. And then, okay, just learn to recognize the differences and even have fun and play around with it. And I would really love to get your take on how you deal with that for yourself, but also with your students, if you have any maybe tips or tricks or something like that for somebody that's been struggling with their accent and okay, I don't really want to sound like I do. I want to have an American accent or a UK accent or whatever.
Mhm.
How do you deal with that and what would you recommend to somebody like that?
Thank you. Great question, because there are so many things we can say about this. So, from like you alluded to, just being enough, really. You talked about not having to change stuff or improve. So, I think the acceptance and self-reflection, that's big. But then again, if you want to change it for whatever reason, even get a new one. But if you want to, let's say, drop a certain accent, maybe you feel like it's not easy for people to understand and you want to communicate better, or you want to improve the relationships you have at work, anything like that, then of course there's different ways we can work with that. And the first aspect of it is understanding what it is that we'd like to work on. And if there's anything that you could essentially drop or change or switch around. So, diagnosis in that sense. And then for some people, it is the understanding that we want to neutralize a certain way that we sound, and that's fine. We can do that. So I actually, that is one of my um, aspects of my teaching, is the accent work and becoming that person that you want to be. Not necessarily a copy of anybody else, but the true self in a different language, and with a particular accent that you like, that you've created or um, adopted um, for yourself. So I would say play around. Be very playful with sounds. Don't don't feel like you're silly just because you sound very different or because you're sounding a bit over the top. You have to try these things so you can then crank them back down. And again, it is brilliant to get a teacher for some of this, at least. I mean, there are some people who are very motivated. They can really do a lot of stuff on their own, and I think that's brilliant, and I do a lot of self-study. But there are certain reasons that we need mentors for. And not only does it save time, but you've got to just first do your research, trust the person, or talk to either one of us and study with us. That's fine. But there's so much information out there, and you sort of need to know who to trust a little bit. So um, trust yourself always. I'd say if you feel weird about something, um, just ask yourself, what's the reason? And then you might end up honestly answering yourself and saying, "Oh, because I don't think I sound credible, you know? I don't think people will want to do business with me." Okay, fine. Then let's change that. Who sounds credible to you? To you, because everybody's opinion is different. But if to you a particular, let's say, um, Chinese or American businessman or a CEO woman who feels like she's accomplished a lot of stuff, sounds credible, then go for that. So for one, mentors, and being playful. To figure out who you'd like to use as a role model for your sound, and then play about with that, and then give yourself time. And then there's a lot more that we could get into, but we would have to have a special session on that. But it's a good start, I'd say.
And I would really love to pry a little bit, if I may, into what you started talking about with that self-reflection and allowing yourself to essentially give yourself time, but like you said, really questioning yourself. What's your
I
process for
I
that? Do you
think
have
you've got
any
to have
specific questions that you ask yourself?
probably loads, but you've got to have a balance.
Hmm.
You definitely have to strike the balance of, you self reflect, but you self-reflect to just be real with yourself. And I think when you're at peace, that's the right direction, because we want to have this kind critical thinking around how we sound or what we're good at or our unique selling points if we're a brand, and what we represent essentially. And that is this honesty that's important. But then we need to let go of the judgment and just say, great, I'm enough. And I'm enough to be loved and respected. And even my effort, the fact that I'm trying to dig into this, that's important. And then what can I do to improve? And why do I want to improve? Is it that I want to improve because people said so, or I want to improve because I truly feel like if I did A, B, or C, I would represent myself better. I would um, be a clearer communicator. I would be better at my job. I would be kinder to people. I'd be kinder to myself. So just be real and figure out what your reasoning behind any sort of a change or improvement or addition is. And then so those are the questions really, sort of why do I want to do that? And there's this exercise of asking yourself if you're struggling with a decision or you need to figure out why you're feeling a certain way. Ask yourself why about 5 times, and you can find out some really interesting things. I mean, going into something super basic, but like, um, why do I feel antsy? Oh, well, because I don't know, I didn't get enough sleep. Okay, why? Well, I didn't get enough sleep because I was too excited. Why? Well, I was excited because I have this big thing today. Okay, so why was I so excited? Because I want to represent myself and others better. Okay, why do you want to represent yourself, so well? Because I want to give the right advice. So that's essentially me today. I would like to make sure that um I come across as clearly as I can, and hopefully that it inspires or helps people, that it doesn't scare them. You don't have to have everything figured out. It's just the vulnerability and the willingness to try. I think that's super important.
Have a minute of silence on its own just so it can, really internalize everything because I feel like and this is something that I notice in myself very often and something that I catch myself on is I listen to something really inspiring and something great and then okay, cool, time to move on to something else.
Mm.
And I don't give myself enough time to internalize it, to just sit in silence for a few seconds and wow, what can I do with that? Because I feel it's all, great and dandy to, oh, be yourself and be strong and whatever. But if you don't actually internalize it and if you don't actually return the dial, so to speak, into, okay, what does that mean for me? How do my actions have to change with that? Or do I want my actions to change as a result of what I just heard? I feel like that moment is the most significant part that I feel like a lot of people don't give themselves, at least in my circles. I don't know about
Yeah, that's a
everybody,
great
but
point. Yeah, great point. Absolutely. 100% agree. We need to give ourselves time to process things. And again, um, some things can sink in and maybe they'll come back up in a few years. And then you go, oh, that's what it could have meant for me. Well, it means that now. Or you go, well, great, very interesting. I don't agree. And that's brilliant. I think a
yeah,
lot of the times nowadays, um, we're almost pushed into agreement because we sound like we don't agree with each other. Um, then maybe it's an attack or that we're not able to tolerate somebody else's uh, you know, I just the person, the sort of that the attack there is ad personam, that we're actually going against somebody, and it's we might just not agree with their opinion, and that might be okay. And I think to take that moment and to go, this is interesting. This is what I took from it for myself, and this is what I understood. Um, yeah, I might keep that for a bit, and then I'll have a think, you know, or just go, no, it's nonsense. She's just too excited about everything and talking whatever. And that's fine. It's like, yeah, maybe. I mean, excitement talks through me all the time. um, yeah, whatever it is that works for you. That's, I think, a lot of the time we don't have and the moment to just accept ourselves as we are. And there is a lot of work within the acting industry and actors themselves. We have to get to know ourselves, to accept ourselves as we are with the beautiful, perfect imperfections in order to truthfully portray a different character. Because if you're not truthful about yourself, how are you going to be able to show somebody else's truth? And then again, that is okay for who you want to be in a different language too. So you can sound perfect and still feel crappy, or you can sound like there's maybe a different international interesting accent and feel super comfortable at speaking. So just take that into account. Is that something that you want to do? You just want to have the flow of conversation, or you want to have the flow and the natural sounding accent? And either is fine, really.
And would you say that, like you said, to have that self-confidence within yourself to be able to be an effective actor? So has that, if we reverse that, has acting, voice acting, and I suppose modeling as a big one as well, has that impacted your confidence? I would say, I would guess positively or not so much.
Yes, definitely. But I think I did talk to my colleague. I've worked in a lot of different fields, and as you probably noticed, and I probably mentioned at least 3 times, I get excited about different things. So I've worked with fisheries and still work in this area. I'm all for improvement and change and support. So there's a lot of stakeholder work I do. There's all kinds of stuff I do, and I think so. My colleague, going back to that story, my colleague said, "Well, you're very confident, and I said, well, I'm glad I seem like that, and I suppose I am. I'm not trying to be um over the top, but it is important to just know your skills. So know your skills and know what you can still improve, and I think that will give you the confidence, your toolkit. So as an actor, if you have technique and you studied and you've got the willingness to study more, then that's your toolkit. If you know, um, for language learning, it might be the verbs, it might be some grammar, or it might be the right way that you pronounce certain things. Read out loud. Read out loud for 20 minutes a day. And then the more you do that, the more you get yourself, your brain, everything, the whole system used to the fact that you're actually fluently and fairly um at a fairly good speed speaking in a different language. And then you end up doing it yourself. So your knowledge, expertise, and your work ethic will give you the confidence. You have to have self reliance, and then the grace to say, well, I did everything I could. I tried, and that's where we are. Let's improve. What are the lessons learned? What can we improve for next time? And then move on. Thank you next, Thank you. Next project.
I heard ones, and I wonder if maybe you've heard that before and what your take would be on this, but I heard ones that confidence is not really thinking that you can do everything, but having enough evidence in your background to support that you can do it if you even if you've never done it before, because if you have, then it's easy to be confident, but if you've never done it, then having the, like you said, the skills, the knowledge in your background to say, okay, I've never done this before, but I can. Do
Yes,
you think that flows into what you were talking about?
I think so. I think that's the sort of confidence and faith that you have. I think it could work. I mean, it's possible. It's possible. Or faith in general. And then, especially if you're quite spiritual or religious, you can use that. But the idea of visualization as well, why not give it a go? I mean, your imagination is an extremely powerful tool. And and that tool can really help you get what you need. So if you'd like to picture yourself speaking a different language, um, or maybe getting that job that you want, or traveling somewhere, or buying yourself something, just a little treat, whatever it is. Um, just imagine that. So I think that's where you get the confidence as well. That you know what, where else you get it from? It's your attitude. Um, it's the not only that it could happen, but I've done a lot of stuff, not me right now, but yes, I suppose as well. But the sort of figurative I've done a lot of stuff that was inspiring or scary already. I can do it again. Or the idea of I'll know how to approach it. I'll do my research. I will be committed to the task and I will give it a go. And if these are the ways to achieve this particular goal, then why not me? I might as well do that. I think it's just being real. And then there's another thing, trusting the people who believe in you and honoring their belief in you. So quit whining. Not true. You can whine all you want. You need feelings. You really need to cry things out, okay? But then get going. Cry for a day, a week, a month, and then go, thank you. I really needed to process things. I really needed that moment. I really needed a week of a break, or I needed to grieve something. And then thank you next.
I think that creates a very nice big circle to something that I wanted to come back to what you said at the very beginning, Naomi, with your poetry. And
Yes,
I feel like maybe that could be a good outlet of what you're talking about.
yes, definitely. Um, yeah, so I love poetry and definitely being able to process things. And then I was like, okay, what do I do? So I'll just mention, because we were going in circles around my name anyway. So it is Noemi, but you said it beautifully so many times anyway. So we'll keep it at that. But so going back to poetry, you just need to be able to process things. And if writing stuff down, your feelings, your thoughts, or the beauty that you see, even in a leaf or an animal, is something that can bring you closer to the moment that you're living, I think that's just wonderful. And we have to be good observers, very good observers as artists. And I would definitely make a point that a person who studies a different language is an artist, because they are opening up their creativity, their life to so many new possibilities. And that is one of the skills of an artist. So, yeah, poetry. Poetry is fun. I do write for commission, but I also write monologues, sort of monologue poetry takes. And one of them was for a What Makes Me Woman event, which ended up being streamed and its premiere in Dubai. And it was really, really a great event. And the idea of sisterhood was celebrated. And I essentially wrote a tribute to women in general, as I know them, as I don't agree with some of them. And yeah, we might end up putting like a little link somewhere in there if anyone wants to hear it. We could go there.
Do you usually do it in English or Polish or Spanish or some of your new languages maybe as well?
Uh, Usually the three. Um, so this one was in English. I have a lot of poems about friendship and feelings in Spanish. I've got quite a few on being in the moment, or family, or missing family, in Polish. And I think it also depends on where your part of yourself, that persona, is at. Where are they? What are they thinking about? So essentially, what are you thinking about? And I think it's about bringing all of them together, all parts of you, that makes you whole, and that makes you feel quite fulfilled. So I would say it's definitely okay to be quite analytical and creative at the same time. It's okay to just be you. And I think a lot of people don't get to hear that often enough.
Very true. Very true. Do you? hear that often enough?
I think, oh, I like this question. It's like, spicy. You know what? Sometimes yes. Yeah, because it makes you think, and it's like, no, I don't. And it's like, or it's like, yes, I do.
Yeah.
And I think it depends. I've got some amazing people, some wonderful friends, family, partner who, people believe in me. And it's great. But then there are moments that I feel like, well, why didn't you tell me I'm awesome today? Like right before my meeting or something. And it's like,
Right, basically,
because
yeah.
yeah, because you know what? Because I've got to tell myself that. And we all, I don't know if we all do, but I think at times people hate this responsibility. Like, you've got to tell yourself that you're enough. You've got to tell yourself that you're great because you're the one who's there with you forever from the first breath till, the last as well. And it's beautiful. We've got this amazing moment on earth and it is just so full of opportunity. Just enjoy it. Just have fun. So, yeah, love yourself if you can. And you know what? Start with just walking up to the mirror and going, you tried today, and that's good. We're going to try again tomorrow.
That's what I see absolutely heartbreaking with so many people that they have this lack of self-worth almost that they can't bring themselves up to do that, and that's such a tragedy in my eyes because like you said, I mean, what we have is an absolute miracle of miracles that we're even here together using this strange device to make sounds that you understand and you make sounds that I understand, and it's just so insanely incredible when I sit and think about it, and then I see people, oh, but I, hate my life and I don't enjoy it and I'm not really doing what I love. And of course, it's easy to say, oh, just do it. But there is that essence in it, I think, that if you say it to yourself enough times, like what you were talking about with that visualization, that if you say, okay, I am the person that I want to be, or I am the person that I dream of being, or I am doing this thing that I really love, if you tell yourself that relentlessly for 5 or 10 years, or hopefully less, but that the more you do it, the more you create those neural pathways that actually create those opportunities or allow you to even see them. I feel like very often we're just so stuck in our own brains and then life passes us by. But like you were talking about, just opening yourself up and seeing what's really possible.
Yeah, 100% true. We do have so many opportunities, but then at the same time, it's just giving ourselves this time. And sometimes people need to be down in order to bounce back up. So I get that, but I would encourage everyone to start believing that you can change things. We can all change things for each other, for ourselves. Uh, and then again, the only thing that's constant is change. Okay, things change. And I've heard a group of brilliant actors talking about this too shall pass. So if you are, down, it can pass, it can go away. But equally, if you're, on top of the world, it's like, okay, but be humble because this too could pass. And then you keep going and then you reinvent yourself. One of the things I talk about in my courses is just creativity, taking time to rest, recuperate, recover, and reinvent yourself if needed. But rest, it doesn't have to sleep or quit, but it needs to rest. So um, again, it is okay if people feel a certain way right now. There could be many reasons from physiological, biological, family related trauma, all this. Nothing is negated here. It's more so, how do you love yourself through that? How do you go, I really can't look at you right now, but I know you're trying, so I'm going to give it a try. And then start talking to yourself like that. If the idea is that, oh God, you just can't. And it's like, fine, I'm going to start liking you today. I'll try. And then the more you do that, it's like, hey, you showed up again for me today. Thanks. It's just becoming your own friend. And it seems like, it's I might be talking about it freely, so it seems easy. No, I have to talk to myself. I sometimes get overwhelmed. I need to lie down and just ground myself physically just go, oh, no, no, feelings going through. I need to just take a moment. I'm overstimulated. What's going on? Or I need to go and big myself up and go, I believe in you. You're doing well. You're trying. It's gonna be okay. So everybody's got these moments. It's just not everyone talks about them. People are afraid to be vulnerable or aren't able to call it that.
I love how really philosophical this got. I'm very much enjoying everything that you're talking about.
Thank you. I just, again, really want to thank you for this opportunity because it's so nice to be able to nerd out with someone, and I hope nobody takes offense at this. It's I'm saying it lovingly. It's nice to be able to talk about things that are deeper and then bring them back up to just daily stuff. I mean, and then again, playfulness, just have fun with things. Have fun.
And tell me, Noemi, is there anything that we haven't really discussed yet? Anything that you would like to bring to the surface?
I think so. I think there are a couple of things. So uh, one, I suppose, is a couple of successes that I literally learned about this week. So one of the films I've been in um, was nominated for four um, different festivals, one in International Film Festival in Wales, one two in London, I believe, and one in the States. And we just found out that it was awarded a semifinalist. Uh, Name and whatever perks shall come with. So that's super awesome. It does talk about a tough topic of a tough family life, but there's different ways, different spins, different, there's ways to reinvent yourself, learn, get better, what have you. So it just asks questions, and then whatever people draw from it, that's great. So that's one great thing. um I think going back to the modeling, you know what? It's I'm a mid-sized model. I love that. It's fine. You can honestly do not talk yourself out of whatever it is that you want to do. So, oh, but you're not tall enough, but you're not. Who says? Who says nowadays? That's the coolest thing about the creative industries and any industries now is that there's so much more diversity, inclusivity, understanding of neurodiversity, and authenticity. People are allowed to be themselves, even if it is, a very fun, quirky personality. That's okay. Just be yourself. So that and yeah, just try to believe in yourself because I believe in you. I do. I would always say it to my students. And this isn't to say that you're like my students, but my students were people I learned from. So my students, it
Of
wasn't
course.
anything like, so I learned loads from my students and still do. And quite a few of them have become my closest friends. And then sometimes you can meet somebody, so beautifully and so unexpectedly. Like, you reached out to me and I thought, oh, she's so cool. I just want to talk to her. Absolutely. So that was brilliant. And speaking of that, I would like to ask you a question because you had to reinvent yourself in different ways, or maybe you wanted to, and you moved around the world and you probably ask everyone all these amazing questions, but you've got so much to give, and it's just super to hear that. And I had an opportunity when we caught up to hear some of it. So I'd like to just ask, what is your way of not giving up or reinventing yourself or just going, you know what, this is the accent I want to have, or this is what I want to do. What's your piece of advice, or how do you do that?
Honestly, that's been a very strange journey for me, I feel, because when I first started speaking English, it was in Australia, and so just by assimilation being there, I developed, so to speak, the Australian accent. But then
Hmm.
one day, and it was honestly such a surreal experience, I just woke up and was like, you know what? I don't think I really like this accent. I don't think that's me. So then that sparked a whole conversation in my own head of, okay, so if not this, then what's next?
Yes.
And
Hmm.
from that, it was the option of all of the more standard accents and something that I was so surrounded by, and I suppose we all are with American culture and movies and TV shows and music and everything. So that was the somewhat obvious choice for me at that stage that, okay, well, that's what it is. And so it created a bit of a spark into, okay, well, how do I do that? And for me, it was a bit of a long journey into, okay, learning what the sounds are and how they're different. Are there any sim sounds or any similar sounds that I can stick with? Any new ones that I can learn? And it was a very funny experience as I was changing it because I don't know, for anybody listening, imagining, okay, well, how do I change my accent? It doesn't just happen, one day you wake up and, oh, magically you have a different accent, but it takes a long time of, or at least in my experience, of trial and error of, okay, maybe I try to make this sound, and like you said, exaggerating it at the beginning, and then, ooh, that was a little bit too much. Let's dial it down a little bit so I don't sound crazy. And then all of my friends were like, "Oh, why do you speak like this? Why do you sound like that?" And it was a very weird thing for them as well that I was sounding different all of a sudden. So that's one lesson that I would definitely give to anybody listening, that people maybe will look at you a little bit differently and maybe they're gonna stare and maybe they're gonna be weirded out. But that's okay because, like you said, I'm with myself until I die, and maybe they are not. So at the end of the day, you're really just doing it for yourself. Or, like you said, of course, it depends. Maybe, like you said, do I sound credible? Do I sound trustworthy? Obviously, that's a big part of it as well. And then more people are involved. But as a whole, I would say changing your accent or learning a new one, what we were talking about before, takes quite a lot of time, especially the first one. And then I've noticed over time that there were certain sounds that I very much enjoyed in the Canadian accent, those kinds of O's. And at the beginning, I was laughing at them. And then I thought, but that sounds kind of cool, actually. And so, started sprinkling a little bit of that in, or some maybe different accents that I haven't. Okay, maybe a little bit of Salt Bay, sprinkling that in. And so, like you said, at the end of the day, it created something that's uniquely me, that it's
Yeah.
not, oh, okay, this is a very clear standard American or Canadian or UK or whatever. It's a little bit of all of them, maybe a little bit of this one, and maybe some backgrounds of the Australian one. And I'm
And
perfectly
yeah,
happy with that. So
and it's yeah, perfectly and perfectly beautiful. And that's what it is, you know. I've spent so long in the UK, and not only does do I go with, you know, the Midwest, the sort of, rather than large flares of different twangs and accents, but at the same time, if you like a certain phrase or you want to put that in to your way of expressing yourself, well, just go ahead and do that. So, and this is what we do automatically. We pick up on different things, and our experiences, and the speech and speech patterns and intonation. So it's just really neat to enjoy what it is that we're dealing with, rather than judge ourselves. So I think, but then again, it is all learning. It's just a learning experience that you have to give yourself grace for. And I think um, it's just nice to be able to chat about all these things today. Really enjoyed it.
that's as a little bonus thing that I just thought of with what you said. That's something that I've always been very envious of with a lot of the, especially from my experience, basically, but most of the Latin, maybe Central South America Spanish speakers, they have this ease, or they have this confidence of just weaving in some Spanish words into what they say. And I always loved that. And I was always so envious of that because if I tried doing that with Polish, then not a single soul would understand. But with
Yes, we've
Spanish,
got
it's so
Polish as
simple.
well.
So it's like
Yeah, we'll
such
have
a
to do that.
shame.
You can call me anytime and just say like, "Oh, you know what? We should go and eat pierogi." And like, if anyone doesn't know what pierogi are, you're missing out. It's the best dumpling ever. So yeah.
Recommend. Yeah. And Barscht. Love it.
Oh goodness. Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, Polish soups are the best. But yeah, yeah, definitely. Just ease and playfulness. See, and we're back on food. What's happening?
I guess
Uh,
it's time.
I think so.
Perfect, perfect. Well, is there anything else that we missed? Perhaps maybe we can talk a little bit about where people can find you.
Yes, please find me on Instagram at Noemi Vox. So Noemivox, or Twitter, Vox Noe. So Voxnoe. There are different, you can essentially, I'm Googleable, so you can look me up. There are some aspects on IMDb. I do have my website. My website is noemivox.com. You can find me on Angielski's Noemi, so English with Noemi, on Instagram as well, and Noemi Vox at TikTok. So definitely open to just chatting to people, answering questions, working with brands, or acting, voice acting, and I suppose teaching too. So anyone wants to have a chat, go ahead.
Any final pieces of wisdom?
Um, if you, yeah, actually, on that topic, follow through. If you ever go and network with anyone, and I was at at an event recently, and I ended up befriending a bunch of, I suppose, trainees as well. And they were super kind and they were wonderful. And they're like, oh, this is stressful. How do we network? And I said, "Well, just talk to people. And then if you do have an opportunity to get their contact details and you think that you could offer something of value and maybe you'd like to learn something, reach out to people. People don't know what you'd like to have until you ask them. And then they can just say, no, sorry, or no, thank you, or next time. And you know what? That's fine because you're not missing out on anything. You might just be gaining. So believe in yourself, and then other people can start doing so. Or again, start believing in yourself. Start trying to believe in yourself.
And that's a perfect piece of advice, and I think we could go on a tangent
Yeah.
on that for the next 30 minutes, but
Yeah, for all
to
of
keep
us.
it
Let's all believe in ourselves.
indeed, indeed, perfect. Well, thank you very much again for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you and listening to all of your wonderful pieces of advice, and I hope we can do it again soon.
Oh, absolutely. Wonderful to see you again. Thanks again. And hello to everyone. Thank you for bearing with us. I really enjoyed being here. And yeah, until next time.
Until next time. Hey, I'm glad to see you here. Let me know what you most enjoyed about this conversation, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one. Do zobaczenia.